Hello everyone, welcome to the Project Veritas Wall of Shame, where the journalists' reputations go to die, where journalists have to print retractions and corrections and articles questioning our journalism ethics. They call us a far-right, a right-leaning organization, but they've printed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of corrections. This time, this retracto goes to the New York Times in the Seth Dillon Babylon Bee article they wrote. The New York Times has printed a second update. They've printed two retractos in the same article. Unbelievable, or shall we say completely believable. Cue the retracto theme song.
Retracto, the correction alpaca. Retracto, he's coming at ya.
So as you recall, Seth Dillon, the CEO of Babylon Bee, we did this in retracto 338. Why do you think that Mike Isaac was compelled to update the article?
Well, he was getting a lot of mentions on Twitter. He's getting tagged all the time saying, Mike, what is this? This is garbage. This is nonsense.
The New York Times originally reporting the Babylon Bee, a right-leaning site, sometimes trafficked in misinformation. They updated it to read, the Babylon Bee, a right-leaning satirical site, has feuded with Facebook and the fact-checking site Snopes over whether the site published misinformation. Now, even though they corrected the article, Seth and Project Veritas was not satisfied with the original correction, so the New York Times had to print a second correction. And in this correction, again, I just read you the update, they updated it a second time to now read, quote, Facebook often dealt with far-right misinformation sites that used satire claims. They put satire in quotes. They edited out Babylon Bee and Seth Dillon. Satire claims to protect their presence on the platform, Mr. Brooking said. So the New York Times is now quoting this guy Brooking, and they've edited out Babylon Bee from the original article. If you go to the website at the New York Times, the final correction, dated June 10th, reads, quote, an earlier version of this article referred imprecisely to the Babylon Bee, a right-leaning satirical website. That means they got it wrong. It continues, quote, and a controversy regarding the handling of its content by Facebook and the fact-checking site Snopes. While both Facebook and Snopes previously have classified some Babylon Bee articles as misinformation rather than satire, they have dropped those claims. And the Babylon Bee denies that it is trafficked in misinformation. So where the New York Times said in their original update that the Babylon Bee has feuded with Snopes over the site published misinformation, Snopes changed their information, forcing the New York Times to print a second correction, and there you have the vortex of propaganda full circle. None of this would have happened. None of it. But not for a legal letter. Seth Dillon, the CEO of Babylon Bee, had to hire an attorney and send a letter, Mediaite reporting, quote, New York Times admits Babylon Bee is satire, not misinformation, after a legal threat. The New York Times is afraid now of litigation as a result of the Project Veritas win on motion to dismiss in New York State Supreme Court.
I'm sure he's going to be more than satisfied.
Okay.
This is sent to a Ms. Brayton at the New York Times Company, who's the executive vice president and general counsel of the New York Times. Quote, demand for retraction of New York Times article by Mike Isaac. The letter reads, quote, Mike Isaac, a reporter of the New York Times, authored a defamatory article. And it goes on to say, though the same article was updated by Mr. Isaac, the update remains defamatory because it nevertheless maintains that the Babylon Bee is a, quote, far-right misinformation site that uses satire claims to protect their presence on the Facebook platform. See the article. Both versions of the article constitute defamation by libel per se, and the tortious interference with business and contractual relations. This updated version is no better because it names only the Babylon Bee as the purported far-right misinformation. They keep on calling these organizations far-right and right-wing. I go back to the George Orwell quote, that freedom is the freedom to say that 2 + 2 = 4. If that is allowed, all else follows. And why isn't the New York Times standing by its reporting? What is the New York Times doing? The legal letter goes on. Quote, The New York Times insinuates the Babylon Bee has feuded with Facebook. And as you should know, the Babylon Bee at that time was not feuding with Snopes as to whether it publishes satire or misinformation. To the contrary, at the time of your, quote, update, Snopes had already retracted any such insinuations. The legal letter concludes saying, the Babylon Bee demands the New York Times immediately publish a full and complete retraction of all versions of the above article. Failure to do so will result in further damages, which hereby reserves all of its rights to bring a lawsuit in this matter. This was dated June 2nd. On Friday, June 11th, Dana R. Green, Senior Counsel, New York Times Company Legal Department, sends an email. I write in response to your letter received by the New York Times on June 8th. We've carefully reviewed the concerns raised in your letter, and in response, we have removed the reference to the Babylon Bee from your article and appended a correction. The updated article can be found here. If you'd like to discuss this matter further, please feel free to contact me. What a disgrace! What's the most extraordinary thing about all of these facts is the New York Times keeps printing retraction after retraction in the Seth Dillon case, but refuses to correct in the Project Veritas case against them. In fact, the New York Times admitted in its answer in New York State court that they got the facts wrong. So they admitted that what Liban Mohammed did was in fact illegal. They originally reported the law was suspended. It was not suspended in the state of Minnesota. They've admitted that as much in New York State court. But we do have a special guest. Seth Dillon has agreed to join us. What's your reaction to this latest update?
Well, I'd say it's a big improvement because what they've done this time, which is what they should have done the first time, is actually remove the false defamatory statements from the story, right? So in the initial update, they took out the line about how we sometimes trafficked in misinformation and then added in this line that talks about how we feuded with Snopes and Facebook about whether we're misinformation or satire.
Why do you think that they made this correction in your case, not ours?
That's a good question. I will say this, and I honestly think this. I think as a result of your actions, the pressure that you guys are putting on them, I think the New York Times is hesitant to wade into those waters again and go down a path that's going to lead to more litigation.
It's almost like they fear you suing them. They're afraid of that. That's why they're making the correction.
I don't know about us specifically, but I don't know that they want to get involved in litigation with everyone. I think maybe they're concerned that there's a precedent that's being set here that people who do sue them are going to see some success. They might get past motion to dismiss, as you did.
Well, lawyers have informed me that you still have a case, a libel lawsuit, if you want one. I mean, just because someone's corrected something doesn't negate the malice and the defamation that they did towards you.
The New York Times used misinformation to smear us as being a source of it. It's extremely ironic. But it's not merely ironic. It's also malicious because they knew better. So I agree with you. There is still a case here, and that's something that we have to think about and consider seriously, is whether or not we want to keep pressing this or just say, let it lie and say that the correction's enough.
Folks, you heard it here. Seth Dillon not saying unequivocally that he won't sue the New York Times, but not saying that he will. Nevertheless, it appears as though the New York Times fears litigation and fears transparency, fears being deposed. They don't like that.
They want to not be sued even more than they want to not tell the truth.
Well, Mike, Isaac, we have framed two update retractions. They're going to go on the wall of shame. They will live in infamy forever.
You're going to have to start charging me rent for all the space I'm taking up on your wall.
Yeah, we're going to start hanging things from the ceiling. It'll be like TGI Fridays. So all of this could have been avoided if you just stuck to the facts. And by the way, Veritas is in the process of potentially filing another defamation lawsuit against the New York Times if they do not correct what they reported on MSNBC, which was a complete contradiction to what they reported in their own article. So we're talking now about simply the law of non-contradiction. Just don't say something and then say the opposite of that thing. We're now beyond, again, we're beyond journalism ethics. We're just entering a Kafkaesque nightmare where people just say the opposite of what they said previously. Stay tuned. It just gets more absurd and absurd. Thank you all.